All right. I think that we are live. Okay, and we're just about there. That's not what I meant to do at all. I've screwed this all up. That's what I'd like to go to, please. There we go. Be just a sec. I gotta clear my throat. I've got some allergies. All right, there we go. I apologize a bit in advance. Like I said, I've got some allergies currently, so I've been running and dripping and sneezing and things like that, and hopefully it won't occur during the show, because, you know, the microphone's pretty good, and you guys don't necessarily need to hear that, so just a little FYI. Greetings from the fires of Mount Doom. If you've got any rings, you should probably chuck them in there while you're nearby. Good morning from California. Things here are pretty un-California-like right now. Woke up this morning and it's snowing, which is really the first kind of substantial snow that we've had this entire season so far, which is kind of interesting. Normally we have snow sometime in November, sometimes we have snow sometime in October, but we had not really had any substantial snow at all, and now they say that we're maybe going to get 3 inches, so we'll see. Right now, it's not sticking to the pavement, it's just sticking to the grass and the trees and things like that, but when it hits the pavement, it melts. But over the course of the day, it may actually start to build up, so I might have to go out and do a little tiny bit of shoveling, which is not the worst in the world. Hello from Poland, Brooklyn, New York. Let's see here. Worcester, UK. I get a lot of those names wrong. Saskatoon. Hello from Osgiliath. Very funny. Ontario, London, Vancouver, Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome. Elgin, Illinois. That's not super far from where I am, and it's down near Adepticon, which will be the subject of today's video later on. Pittsburgh, Western New York. Let's see here. Savannah, Georgia is asking snow. What's that? Yeah, that's what I hear. Saskatchewan, it's too early. Saskatchewan's East Coast, isn't it? I mean, it's in the Eastern time zone. I would think that it wouldn't be that early. People in California, it's a lot earlier, I'm sure. Greetings from Finland. Plenty of snow here every winter. Yeah, we used to have a lot more snow, but this season's been very light. Or actually, it just started, so yeah. West Virginia, Malaysia, Central Finland, Ontario, Hungary. Jason says he's working on his LED desk light project. Somebody posted recently on the Paint Showcase Club a really cool project where they took a piece of, I think it was some sort of molding, like plastic or fiberglass molding, and they bent it so it made a big arc. They like attached it to one end of their table and then the other end of their table, and then it made a big, huge arc over the top of their table, and then they attached LED lights all along it, like glued it or something like that. So you had this light that was coming from every possible angle down, and it looked really cool. I'd like to do that eventually someday. I'm so amazed somebody doesn't sell that, you know, just like as a thing that you can buy, but it is really cool for painting miniatures and things like that. Let's see, Rome, Douglasville, PA, Stuttgart, Southampton. See, that one I can pronounce. Let's see here. Sunday night here. I was just about to go to bed, but work isn't important. Yeah, I guess that's, you know, it's your personal preference. Ray says that Elgin is one town over from Schaumburg, and Schaumburg is where Adepticon is. Okay, that's cool. I think I knew somebody from Elgin years and years ago. Derby is center of the world. All right. It's Worcester, like Worcestershire sauce. See, I can't pronounce that particularly either, so I apologize. Winter is always a better time for hobby for me. Long evenings help me finish old miniatures. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, a lot of people kind of work that way. Let's see here. Another Finland. When can we get some, let's see here, t-shirts? Let's see here. I don't know. That's a good question. I am thinking about doing some t-shirts in the spring. Well, early spring. Last year I did the t-shirts in February, and they went until, I think, March 1st. So I'm thinking about doing something roughly the same. Moderator Matt says hello from Mercury. I don't think he's in Mercury. I'm pretty sure he's down in Illinois. But good to see him. And the Wreck Age stuff. Actually, I sent Matt a couple of pictures last night. I was at a Christmas party for work, and one of my friends from work has been painting Wreck Age stuff and doing good-looking stuff. And I sent he showed me some stuff when we were at the party, because it was at his house. And so I took a picture quick and sent it to Matt. And yeah, it turned out nice. Let's see here. Good morning from Cincinnati. Going to finally punch and assemble my Dark Vengeance box. Oh, that's cool. Someone local to me, a friend of mine on Facebook just recently, who lives here in town, just recently started getting into 40K, and he bought the Dark Vengeance box. It's a good box. It's really nice. Daniel asks about the red dice. Yes, they are here in the house. They're somewhere in here. And I'm hoping I got to get the web store set up for that. There's another product I want to add. There's really two products I want to add, but at the very least, there's one more product I want to add. And so I need to get it finished and manufactured properly, and I'm having a bit of trouble with that, and that's kind of when I want to put up the web store for that stuff. So it will probably be a little bit closer to the, possibly the beginning of the year, or sometime into the beginning of, in the early part of 2017, but then they'll be all set up. Cyprus says, hey there, finally catching up from the northeast of England. Been watching your airbrushing videos as I'm making the leap into using one. Keep up the good stuff with your videos. Yeah, airbrush is really, really, if you can do it, it's really nice, because it's just so much easier. It allows, specifically if you live someplace where it gets humid a lot, or it snows and is cold, it makes things, just for priming alone, it makes things so much easier. I used to rush in the last couple of weirdly warm days of fall to try to get as much stuff built, so that I could then prime it so I'd have it to paint over the winter. And now, I can work on things and prime and do all that kind of stuff, and base coat, and even do some varnishing potentially. And I can do all that stuff at pretty much any time, no matter when, if it's too cold out or whatever, because I'm doing it in the house and I'm doing it with airbrush. So, Lobster Cooker says, have you ever seen the flying ghoul thing from Forge World? I would get one if it wasn't so expensive. It's probably called the Morgul or the Morngul. He's sort of got the only part where he's touching the base is like his hand, and he doesn't have any legs, if I remember correctly. And he's kind of cool looking, but he doesn't blow my skirt up too much, frankly. He's just, I don't know, it's a neat model, but I honestly think the Cairn Wraith is a cooler model, obviously a good deal smaller, but I think they've done other stuff, so yeah. I'm scoring wood grain into popsicle sticks, says Jake. Like with a pen or something, I bet. That's probably pretty cool. Yeah. Have you yet built the Mortark from the Start Collecting Skeleton Horde? Which model did you make? I have not, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly which one I want to go with. It's either going to be the Count, or whatever his name is, Manfred. I'm thinking maybe Manfred, or the woman, and I can't think of her name either. I'd love to be able to figure out a good way to magnetize it so I could swap back and forth, but we'll see. Yeah. Let's see here. Colton says, finally got my comments to work. Hi from Bonnie Lake, Washington. Hello. Carol asks, will you ship shirts and dice overseas? Well, yeah. Last year, earlier this year when I did the T-shirt, shipped plenty of them overseas to the UK, Germany, Australia. I mean, there's a cost, obviously, involved in it. So there's that. That was kind of the big problem with the T-shirts last year, is that in the beginning of 2016, the United States Postal Service changed their rates quite a bit. So it cost almost like $20 to ship a T-shirt to, say, England or Germany or places like that, which really stunk. That being said, if you shipped, let's say, 2 or 3 shirts, it cost the same price, because it was a weight thing. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So I'll definitely be glad to ship them. It's just the question of whether you're going to want to buy them. What a lot of the people did who did buy overseas is they got together with a couple of friends. So then that way they were able to split the shipping. So getting one shirt, paying $20 to ship it, versus getting 3 shirts and getting $20 to ship, paying $20 to ship the 3 shirts and then split it 3 ways made a lot more sense. So. Yeah, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe by this time, or not this time, but maybe by February of next year, maybe the post office will change their rates again, and maybe they'll go down again. I mean, not that they went. It's not that the rate actually went up. It's just the way they classified the weight. It used to be that from 8 ounces to 12 ounces was one cost, and then from 12 to 16 was another, and it went in steps like that. And then in 2016, like in January, they just made it that basically everything 8 ounces up to 32 ounces cost the same price, which is ridiculous, but that's what they did. So maybe they'll fix it. So, Vermilios says, have you checked out the Kingdom Death Kickstarter? I'm not super familiar with their products. I mean, I know the name, and I know that they put out some really amazing looking miniatures and stuff like that, but I haven't looked at their Kickstarter at all. So no, I haven't really looked at that stuff. Hello from Northern Germany. Let's see here. Peter Pan says the Mortarks can be easily magnetized by just shoving magnets in the saddle and the back of the horse thing. I think that's kind of what I want to do. I would have to paint them so that they look right. So if you just take off one person and put the other person on, that it still kind of works cohesively. We'll see how that works, though. I'm looking forward to it because it's a cool model. But I do also have my excuse me, I have my Terrorgeist built. I found it on eBay for super cheap, and it was like 3/4 built, and it was basically just kind of a box of parts when I got it, and I had to do some work to it, and then put it on a round base because they already started putting it on a rectangular base because it was for old fantasy. So I've gone through all of that. It's all built, and I've been in build mode for 2 months now, where I've just been building and not painting anything, and I'm just about to the end of that. I have to finish the last Necron Tombblade of the 3, which are a pain to build. These tiny little jet bikes, there's 40 pieces in each jet bike. It's just rough. So when I get that last jet bike done, which might even be this afternoon, I will then be ready to go back into paint mode, which means there will be an afternoon or an evening coming up in the next week where I will basically sit in my airbrush room for a good couple hours and prime, let's see, 15 Space Marine Scouts for a kill team, 10 Necron Warriors, and the 3 Tombblades for another kill team, the Terrorgeist, 5 Hex Wraiths, 3 Vargeists, and some objective markers that I've been working on. So yeah, there's going to be a big bunch of that stuff, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So. Life as I Know It asks, which is your favorite Primarch model? To be fair, I haven't really been looking at them very closely, so I can't really say. I mean, the excuse me, Horus is pretty good. He's a pretty cool model, and I've seen some really cool pictures of a bunch of them, but Horus and Angron are the only 2 that I can really think of off the top of my head that I've looked at. I know I believe I saw both of those at Adepticon this year at the Crystal Brush. People had entered those particular models yet, I believe, and yeah, so I think those are kind of interesting models. So yeah. Let's see here. Hello from Belgium. J.E. Granberg says, have you checked out the Other Side game from Weird? They have new information and will kickstart it. No, I think I heard about it, but I haven't seen it. I believe it's more board gamey than it is like a miniatures game, like Malifaux is, which is also from Weird. So yeah. Mark says, hi from Germany, sitting here painting my new Bloodthirster. That's a big project. Good luck on that, Mark. That's yeah, I've got a Glotkin down in the basement that's not even built, and he's eventually going to be a big project. All those big models are big projects. The Canadian Barbarian says the Gesso primer is working real well. Yeah, I need to try it again one of these days. I mean, I'm a bit spoiled in that I have an airbrush, so I don't need to try it, but if you don't have an airbrush and you still want to prime in the house, without getting the propellant smell from the rattle can all throughout the house and making everybody unhappy, there's this stuff called Gesso, which is generally designed for painting onto canvases. and then then you can put the paint on the canvas if you're like a fine art painter. But it'll also work pretty well on miniatures as a good kind of primer base. So, Life as I Know It says, I like Conrad Kurz, Corvus Corax, and Lehman Russ best. I don't think I've seen those last two. I think I've seen Kurz, but I don't think I've seen Corax or Lehman Russ, the Primarchs. I haven't really looked at the Forge World site in quite some time, so that's part of the problem, I think, yeah. Patrick says, are you playing any Age of Sigmar Championship or team tournaments? I'm assuming you're asking about Adepticon. No, I'm not playing any tournaments at Adepticon. I generally am not a tournament player because I'm not particularly strategic. So when I go to Adepticon, I go there for a bunch of different reasons. But I'm glad that people do get to do tournaments and have fun that way. But generally, I don't play in any of the tournaments. I do have a couple of events that I've signed up for, and I'm thinking about a couple others. But yeah, so we'll see how that works out. Dwarf Lord says, hi from a Brit in Japan. How's it going? Let's see here. Magnus is a Primarch. Sure, yeah. Hello from Florida, painting Red Dragon. That's cool. Christopher Dick. I know Christopher. Looking forward to getting games in with you at Adepticon. Fez off. I will certainly be bringing at least both my Fezes. I only have the 2. I don't have 3 yet, but I will definitely be bringing Fezes, and we'll have to see if we can get in a game at Adepticon. Ever try ghost tints? Experimenting with them now with my airbrush. I bought a little starter pack of ghost tints at Adepticon probably 3-4 years ago, and that was I tried one and I maybe just wasn't using it right, or I didn't properly shake it, or I'm not sure exactly what. But yeah, I haven't messed with them much since, so I'm not a good resource to ask about them. But they are. I've seen some really interesting stuff done with them. I just haven't really had any good chance or use to do them yet. I would like to do. I could do some kind of maybe interesting ghost stuff, like for my Age of Sigmar Death Army. That could be something cool I could do with some ghost tints. I mean, again, it makes sense. Ghost tints are really good, but you need to varnish the models afterwards. The tint bleeds through any paints you put over the top of them, annoyingly. Okay, well, that's probably part of the way it's made, you know what I'm saying? So, greetings from England. Great channel. Well, thank you. As a recent returner to 40k after a 20-year break, do you think that there's room in the current game for paint themes harking back to the bright and bold 2nd edition? I think that you can, obviously, you can paint however way you want. It's interesting to see when you look back at old, let's say, White Dwarf magazines or just any kind of older, painting competitions, and to see the way that paint kind of styles have changed over the years. It's very interesting to see how that's kind of gone. Like, you look at the stuff that's on the boxes that Games Workshop puts out today versus the stuff that they used to show off in the heavy metal, things back even 10 years ago, and it's a good deal different. I think that now with the internet, we're going to have a lot of interesting, like, it's difficult to go back 20 years and see what paint schemes used to look like and paint styles, because we don't, you'd have to go find a magazine or something. You can't just, it's harder to go back and look at the internet and find it. But as the internet goes on, you'll be able to go back and look 10, 15 years ago and find, stuff from painting competitions like the Crystal Brush, and then be able to compare them to what will soon be the future, and then just kind of see that stuff. I think they'll be kind of interesting. Six Gunner says, thanks, Adam, for your baking soda CA glue basing technique. I tried to mix PVA glue, white paint, and baking soda to make snow texture, and it works great for both terrain and bases. Well, that sounds cool, yeah. I still hope to soon make a CA glue basing tutorial and not glue the base to my fingers and then the table and not swear nearly as much. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm getting things kind of tweaked down in the nerd bunker slowly, and I'm going to be doing some of that hopefully soon. And I talked to Sam, and we're going to hopefully shoot some videos sometime in the month of December. I've got to get a bunch more work done down there so he can come in and set up. But yeah, we'll see how that goes out. The ghost tints are great for shiny jewels if you brush them over a bright, smooth metallic. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, the new jewel or gem paints from GW are probably kind of along that same line, although the ghost tints, I think, are designed to go a little bit more through the airbrush. Adam, hi, what's your favorite Space Marine chapter? Don't think anyone's asked that before. That's a very good question. I was really interested in Black Templar back before they kind of lost their codex. Black Templar used to have their own codex, like, say, of the Blood Angels or Space Wolves and stuff like that. And then back in 6th edition, when they came out with the new Space Marine codex, they basically just folded it into the Space Marine codex, so I was not as happy about it anymore. But my plan was originally to go as a Black Templar player, and then but now, yeah, so now those models that I had built to have Black Templar iconography, because they had really cool add-on kits you could buy that had, like, the crosses on the shoulders and all that kind of cool stuff. Now I'm painting them as my own kind of made-up chapter called Steel Cross, and I'm just using the normal Ultramarine rules because the Ultramarine tactics for Space Marines are actually pretty good. So that's just, and it's just easy, honestly. I don't mind being a little vanilla in that. It's fine by me. What's on your gaming-related Christmas list? Also, have you seen the new Lake Town plastic kit from GW? Would be great for Frostgrave. Yeah, I did see the Lake Town kit, the terrain kit that they just put out. Like, you can't get it. Like, I went and looked at the website, and they're like, oh yeah, this is it, and this is all the parts, and it's made out of plastic. And I was like, wow, that's amazing looking. I kind of want one of those. And they're like, well, it's not in stock. So I'm like, because it's in plastic, I do believe that they will obviously make more. If it was like a resin thing or something like that, I could see it being very limited edition. But if they've made it out of plastic and they've spent the money to make the incredibly expensive steel molds for that, they're going to crank out as many of those as possible. And secondly, they'll work for all kinds of different games. They'll work great for Frostgrave. They'll work great for Malifaux. I think it was on the Malifaux group on Facebook that's where I first saw it. And I think it was this morning, actually. I was, getting ready, just going through and checking stuff on Facebook, and that's where I saw it. So, yeah, I was kind of impressed by it. It's really kind of cool looking. And it's Lake Town, for those of you who didn't, it's Lake Town from the Hobbit movies. So it's these little kind of very normal looking kind of fantasy houses, not so cartoony as like the original fantasy kind of houses were for Warhammer Fantasy. But it's, and then there's like little docks and boats and things like that. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. So, have you ever used Tamiya paints before? Tamiya? Got a model needed painting, but also wanting to get back into painting my Warhammer stuff, but unsure to get their paint or GW. I have used some Tamiya, and I don't know if it's pronounced Tamiya or Tamiya. They're more aimed towards other types of modeling, frankly. It's good stuff, but you have to be careful because it's not, I don't think that it's standard like normal acrylic. I think that some of them it's enamel, which is a totally different animal as far as paints are concerned. The only Tamiya that I've used is they have a smoke color paint, which is really good for basically kind of shading sometimes. And they have another color that you mix with it, and it makes really good blood effects because it's kind of glossy. It's kind of like the blood for the Blood God from GW, but it's made by somebody else, and actually they did it first. So those are the only really paints from them that I've ever used. I did use one of their surface primer, like spray cans once, and it was fine, but it was really expensive, so I didn't really get it too much. You've got me into both Age of Sigmar and Kill Team, Adam. So I've been buying lots from Games Workshop. My local manager hopes you're getting your beak wet with all the money you're sending them. I am. This beak is dry, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I just bought from my local shop Blood Bowl last weekend. So I haven't started building it yet because I've been trying to get all the rest of my stuff done. But yeah, I didn't get sent a copy or anything along those lines. So yeah, no beak wetting at this point. From what I understand, a bunch of people from GW UK are going to be at Adepticon, so I'm hoping to talk to somebody there and just try to start some sort of relationship or something, or maybe, because if they could even just send me stuff once in a while that I could talk about, maybe that'd be great. I don't know. We'll see how it works out, but I don't have much in the way of high hopes for it. We'll see. But it'll be nice just because I know that, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but if you've ever watched Warhammer TV, their YouTube channel, Duncan, who does their painting tutorials, he's going to be doing painting tutorials at Adepticon, which are sold out. Like, they were sold out almost immediately, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, but it'll be cool. Maybe I'll get to meet him and say hi or something, so that'd be fun. According to Josh McCarthy, it's Tamiya. It's an acrylic lacquer. Doesn't brush well, but it is beautiful in airbrush. Oh, interesting. Tamiya. Yeah. The brand name itself, I first learned about years and years and years ago when I was a little kid, because I had a good friend who was really into electric RC cars. And so Tamiya made, and still does, from what I understand, makes a lot of electric RC cars. So I always used to see the brand, from there. But then they also make paints, and they make all kinds of stuff, as it turns out, hobby tools and things like that. Do huge blocks of infantry still work in Age of Sigmar, asks Lobster Cooker. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of the war scrolls for the units that you could use in large blocks of infantry, let's say like something skeletons, just because I'm familiar with them, or, beastmen, beast people, goat people, whatever. Gores is, I think, technically the proper nomenclature, dude. But they have special rules that if you have a group of over 20, you get this extra bonus, or that kind of thing. If you have a group of over 30, you get this special bonus. So large blocks can still work. I generally don't focus on them too much because I just don't want to have that many figures. That being said, I do have, and they're not completely done yet, but they are all built, primed, and about a third of them are completely and fully painted. Well, maybe more, but no, about a third. But I have 3 units of 20 skeletons eventually that will be in my army. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's going to slow the game down a touch more, in some situations, but it can go pretty quickly anyway because it's a quick game. Age of Sigmar, it can be. What do you think of John Blanche's work on miniatures? I think his style, grimdark and rough, is taking the miniatures community by storm. If people like me don't have an airbrush, John Blanche is an artist for Games Workshop. He's been doing like a drawing artist, painting artist for quite some time, but he also does a lot of miniature work himself. He loves to take a bunch of their miniatures and heavily modify them for his own nefarious uses, and I love his work. I'm not a super huge fan of his illustrations, but his conversions and painting and stuff like that are amazing. And if you do ever read White Dwarf, he has a monthly column in there called Blanchitsu, something like that. It's hard to pronounce. And yeah, I mean, there's times when he shows off the models he's working on and converting, and they just are amazing looking. So I do like his kind of work for him. I like the grittier, dirtier kind of look for painting anyway. I just think it's more interesting. To me, a Space Marine should never look so polished and smooth if they're on the battlefield. Like if they're, I guess, at a parade, I guess that's a different story. But I don't know. That's just my personal preference. I just like them to look, like that. I like them to look a little gritty and beat up and war torn. So, let's see here. Peter Pan says Tamiya makes some of the best plastic cement I've ever used. It's brush on and so more precise to use than the little needle things. I have never been a big fan of plastic cement. I don't know why. I predominantly only use CA glue. I only ever use plastic cement if I have to glue in like a canopy, like a clear piece of plastic into some sort of flying vehicle, or if I have to glue the plastic like little base that holds up a flying vehicle. CA glue, super glue, gives off as it dries, it outgasses some sort of vapor which will cause clear things to become cloudy, clear plastics mainly. If you ever watch a TV show like CSI, they will have a fingerprint sometimes on something like a glass, and they need to be able to get a better copy of it so they can figure out who the bad guy is or whatever. And they'll take super glue and put it into a piece, they'll make like a little dish of aluminum foil and pour a bunch of super glue into it, put it in this like fish tank and heat it up, and then it will outgas, and then it attaches itself to the oils in the finger, and then they can get a better pull or whatever. But if you just use it to glue the windows into your Storm Raven or whatever, or any other kind of model, or if you get into model airplanes just for building model airplanes for fun, if you want to glue the canopy into your F4 Phantom and you use super glue, when it dries it will make it will be all foggy and look screwed up. So that's why you use plastic cement for that. I know other people love to use plastic cement on plastic models and they don't use anything else. I've just never liked it. So I always generally prefer CA glue, but it's a personal preference thing. John Blanche, love his conversions, not his sketchy art style. Yeah, the sketchy art style, like, I can kind of appreciate it. It just, to me, his sketchy art style doesn't fit the rest of the art for, let's say 40K or anything like that. But it is, yeah, his conversions and all that kind of stuff and his model painting, I think, are astounding. So I'm a big fan. Let's see here. Just painted fiery orange. Paint bought in the summer of 1996, and it's fresh as new. The old GW paint bottles are amazing. Yeah, I hear that a lot. A lot of people say that the old paint bottles are really the best, and the new paint bottles do not hold the air out as well. And that is a bummer, and I don't know if it's just cost. Someone just recently said, it's interesting how the really, really old Games Workshop paint bottles look a lot like the current P3 paint bottles. P3 is the paint line from Privateer Press, the guys who make War Machine and Hordes. And it's true, if you see them side by side, they do look a lot alike. So I don't know if they're from the same manufacturer or if it's just a design style that they kind of use, but I've never really heard a lot about P3 paints drying out, just sitting in the pot. So Painter Sam, he is a big fan of the P3 paints. So yeah. Let's see here. In the last game of Age of Sigmar, I was using Joseph Bugman and 30 Quarrels, which was 60 shots with scout rules, and it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, a lot of units, a lot of models in an army will usually give you a great weight of fire, which is really helpful. The downside I've found is that a lot of times those big units of like really cheap models, the battle shock phase is not their friend. They usually have a really low bravery. So if you can roll high during battle shock, you can lose 5, 6, 7, 8 guys a turn. Especially if you lost a bunch of guys, yeah, you can really they will just start to crumble like a house of cards. So I have to having a little bit of a nose issue. I'll be back in just a second. This will just take a moment. Okay, there we go. Again, I apologize. Allergies are sort of being rough to me. Let's see here. European says it's 44 degrees Celsius outside and 60% humidity. Do you think I can risk spraying my minis? If it's, well, the thing that they always tell you is, oh, try it on something you don't really care about much and then see what it does. If you're looking at priming, that's one thing. If you're looking at spraying like matte, like Tester's Dull Coat or some sort of matte varnish on, then I would not do it when it's like that, probably. So yeah, I mean, it depends if you're doing like priming. You can get away with. One trick that I see a lot of people talk about is, especially if it's cold outside, but they still want to spray outside, they will get like some sort of vessel that will fit the rattle can inside, and then they fill that with water. And they heat it up in the microwave and get it quite warm, so that basically the bottle, the can of spray can, stays nice and warm. And then you go outside, and then you spray real quick, and then you bring it back in, and so you've got a heated can, and that helps with the paint. But it kind of depends. Moderator Matt asks if it's ragweed. Who knows? It's spring and fall. I generally get something, and allergy-wise. So yeah, it's been on and off, but today it's a little. It seems, I don't know why, but it seems like Sundays. Maybe it's just, I think it seems like Sundays, but it seems like Sundays sometimes are a little bit rougher than other days. But it could be totally worse. Yeah, it totally could be. Smith Jones says my painting is mostly 3-color. Get the model battlefield ready. That's valid. Some people really prefer to play the game and are not interested in the hobby aspect of it all. Then there are other people like me who's much more interested in the hobby aspect, and I like to play the game, but I'm not competitive at it. And then there's other people who only paint display and for fun and enjoyment and stress relief, and pretty much never play. And all of those things are totally valid. I think that it's a great hobby because you can have so many different types of kind of aspects to it. If you don't want to paint at all, but you still want to play and have a good time, and maybe you want to even be competitive, play X-Wing. You know what I mean? Because those ships are already pre-painted. There's tons of tournaments. The Fantasy Flight, the company that makes X-Wing, is very big into making tournaments and regionals and world championships and all that kind of stuff. So that's great for the people who are into that, and also maybe also enjoy Star Wars in general. You know, that's cool. And then you've got people who paint and love to paint and paint all the time and just don't play anymore at all, or maybe never even did, and that's cool. And they go into maybe events and tournaments, or maybe they just do it because they really love it and they put them in a case in their house, and you got the entire gamut in between of all the different places and things you can do, and you can change over time. You used to be maybe a competitive player, and now you're transitioning into starting to paint more and play fun, like, narrative type games. I mean, there's tons of different things you can do. So yeah, let's see here. There's cat-related shenanigans going on in the other room. Let's see here. Talio says, was heating my primer cans and rushing outside last night, and all turned out fine. Well, that's good. See, that's the same kind of thing. If you heat them up, and again, do not put the can in the microwave. That will be very bad. But if you you heat up some water and you put the can in a bowl of heated water, it can help. Do not put the can in the microwave. Let's see here. Durelius? I can't pronounce that. I'm sorry. I'm not great at pronouncing. I am spending way too much time for painting models, and I mean normal Space Marines and skeletons. Well, I mean, I'm still a slow painter, but I'm faster than I used to be. And it all takes basically time where you start to learn shortcuts and techniques that will work for you. There's also, I did a video, I don't know, a couple years ago about the pursuit of perfection and how there are times when you have to be like, you know what, this is close enough, or this is good enough. Like if you're painting for, like trying to win something like the Crystal Brush or some big painting big painting competition, then you really do have to spend a lot of time and really try to do the absolute best you can possibly do. But if you're painting models to put on a table, you don't have to do like a spectacular, amazing, super job. You can just do a pretty good job or whatever and just get it done, because then you can go on to the next models later and you're going to learn more. If you spend too much time on one model or one group of models, it will take too much time, and then you just won't learn, you won't progress. You only learn by painting more models. You don't learn by spending forever on one model. It's just kind of the way that the hobby works. Talix says, I really like both. I've always been a big tabletop fan. I just didn't know it had a face and a name until recently. I actually love both aspects. Sucks being between work, though. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I was between work earlier in the year, and I'm very glad to be working again. And I started back in July, if you've been following for a while, and doing that kind of stuff. Like I said, last night I had a Christmas party for work, and that was a lot of fun. I had a good time. And, yeah, so it's, I mean, the difficult thing, like one of the things you can do when you're kind of between work, or if you're just low on funds in general, or if you just don't want to put a lot of money into the hobby initially because you're not 100% sure, whether you want it or not, eBay, honestly. Like if you want to find old models and practice on old models, there's a lot of validity to doing that, just because you can learn new techniques on models. You're like, well, at least I didn't spend a ton of money on these, you know what I mean? So it works out really, really well. What kind of glue do I use to glue resin? Generally, I use CA glue. That's how I do it, though. As a slow painter, I found that switching to low model games... Oh, and it disappeared. But I think the gist of it is that when you switch to low model games, like if you play a game like the old Fantasy, like Warhammer Fantasy, you had to have a lot of models in your army, and that's problematic. And it's difficult, is my point. Oh wait, I had another screen open over here. Where is it? As a slow painter, I found that switching to low model games made it much easier to keep from getting discouraged. Much easier to paint an army of infinity figures than it is for Kings of War. Exactly. Playing a small skirmish game where you only need maybe 8 guys, maybe 10 soldiers, whatever, in the army gets you finished quicker so that you have a better time. And you're staring down the barrel of 100 or 200 models you have to paint so that you can have a fully painted army. You're like, ugh. But when you play a game that's smaller like that, you can just do that, and it works out really, really well. So, Charles Nelson says, agree about the pursuit of perfection. Have an officer look great and the private's game quality. Sure, exactly. A lot of people spend more time on their HQ units, their bosses, their special units, than they do on the regular kind of, rank and file. And that totally makes sense. Like, I don't spend tons and tons of times on my skeletons, but I've spent more time on, like, the Tomb King, or the Tomb King the Blight King with Tomb Blade, and the Krell, the Lord of Undeath, or whatever his name is. I always look for the best result with the least effort. Underpainting helped a lot, depending on the model. For about an hour of painting after priming, the model is ready for varnish. That's pretty quick. I mean, at least in my experience. But that's good on you. Sam can paint really super quickly too. I'm not that quick generally, but I can get closer to that. I could probably, from underpainting to finished, I bet you I could maybe do 2 hours without really trying to make it look astounding, but still do some decent work. I don't know. I haven't timed myself, I guess, recently, but that's interesting. Adam, any thoughts on the Walking Dead release from Mantic Games? I've seen a little bit about it here and there, but I don't know anything about the actual gameplay. I mean, it's cool that they're basing it off the comic book and not the TV show. I think that's kind of interesting as far as licensing is concerned, but I haven't played it, so I don't know. Smith Jones says, I'm making terrain at the moment. It is emissions harder than painting models to battle standard. Okay, well, working on terrain's a lot of fun too. Let's see. I saw your Wreck Age figures in your previous show, and I think they look really cool. How complicated are the rules compared, for example, to Frostgrave, Malifaux, or Age of Sigmar? I don't think it's very complicated. The one difference that Wreck Age has got to some of those other games is that Wreck Age can be played both as a skirmish kind of miniatures game, but it can also be played as an RPG. So there's both sets of things in the rules, which is kind of interesting. You can also sort of mix in between. You could have skirmish battles, but then RPG, the parts that are not battles, that kind of thing. So it's a very different animal than, say, Frostgrave or Malifaux or things like that, because those are basically just, like, they will have some campaign rules. Specifically, Frostgrave has campaign rules because you play this game and then it's kind of linked to the next game, and then there's a persistence to them, the warband. But it's not like a full-blown kind of RPG, whereas Wreck Age has got that kind of thing. Zandos asks, is it safe to smoke while spraying paint? I would say no. I would say it's also not particularly safe to smoke while not spraying paint, but that's a different story altogether. It says right on the package that the smoke, so it's not safe. But but definitely I would not do it while painting. Specifically not with spray paint, because spray paint is flammable. Again, it says that on the package. So I would not do it. Starter box armies like Dark Vengeance from eBay are great for starting. They are usually about $14 for a tactical squad or equivalent. There's a lot of people who buy like the Dark Age boxes and things like that, and then just part it all out. You buy a Dark Age box, which has got all this stuff in it, and they grab like the tac squad, and they do this, and they do this, and they do this, and they just dump it all into different lots on eBay. So if you don't want to buy the entire Dark Vengeance box, you just buy this part, or you just buy the cultists or whatever. And so that's a good place, again, on eBay, a good place to look for that kind of stuff if you're looking to just either add stuff to your army or just get a specific thing, something like that. Panera says, I found a lot of new tabletop players who don't want to paint their models. As a player who loves painting and playing, I found this, I love the game, but I'm too lazy to paint the models. Frustrating. Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I think it's one of the reasons that X-Wing has been so popular is because you can take it out of the package and just start playing it. I know in our local store, a lot of the guys who play X-Wing are Magic players, and they still play Magic, but they've always been interested in sort of, miniatures, but they don't want to paint and build because they just either feel they can't, or they're just not interested, or they don't have the time, or whatever. But when they're like, oh, look, you've got all these cool spaceships now that are already pre-painted, and you don't have to, they're like, yes, that is what I want to do, which is why it's blown the doors off right now, frankly. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, I think it's cool. But it is interesting when you get people who get into regular miniatures like 40K or Age of Sigmar or Bolt Action, but have no intention of ever painting. I think you are even starting to see some people in the business who are like taking that into consideration. The new War Machine and Hordes starter boxes, they come in colored plastic. So if you buy the Khador battle box set, and you never paint it, at least they're still red because they're in red plastic. The new Blood Bowl, the humans are in blue plastic and the orcs are in green plastic. So at least you can tell them apart, and you don't. It looks a little bit more interesting on the tabletop if you just build them and never paint them. So there's that. So yeah, I understand that too. Let's see. What's the difference between acrylic bottles of paint from Walmart craft stores and the GW Vallejo paints? Would I lose quality in the paint job using the generic bottles? Estelle, that's a good question. The craft paints that you generally get from like Walmart and Hobby Lobby and places like that, the pigments themselves, the pigments, which are the solids that are supported within the acrylic fluid, I forget there's a technical term for it, but I can't think of it right now. The pigments themselves are not nearly ground as finely as the stuff that you get in miniature paints from Vallejo and GW and P3 and stuff like that. So they will be very chunky. They're great for terrain. That sheet paint is specifically great for terrain because you want a little bit more texture sometimes to terrain. I'm not saying it's like texture paint. It's not. But in comparison, when you're painting something this small versus when you're painting an entire building, GW paints and the paints like that are really, really good for small stuff. But, I mean, you can do it, but just watering down the craft paints will not make them any better because it's the pigments themselves that are just kind of very coarse. So craft paints are great for terrain, I will say it again, but they're not great for models. So I like Vallejo a lot. I like GW washes, but I don't use a lot of the rest of their paints much these days, but I'm mainly using Vallejo these days. So they're pretty good paints. I like them a lot. Let's see here. I come from War Machine, where no one paints, and when someone posts painted models, people will get their panties in a bunch because the bases are wrong, or the conversion. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people don't convert a ton. At least it doesn't seem to me as a lot of people convert much in War Machine. It's not, I suppose some people do, and Sam has done a lot of War Machine and Hordes models because he always enters in the P3 contest at Gen Con, which is basically Privateer Press's like big main painting competition they do every year. And it's interesting. You see some conversions, but you don't see a ton of them, at least not in the regular game, not that I've seen. Maybe you guys who play more War Machine, you see lots of guys who are doing it, but I agree. A lot of times I've walked through tournaments at bigger conventions. I've even gone to a tournament just to watch, like when I was first thinking about War Machine years and years ago, and it was a lot of just silver models or black models, and that was pretty much about it, so it's interesting. Let's see here. Bosette says, I spent some time brush priming last night. It's an alternative to using spray cans in the cold outside, but it's so boring in comparison. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It can take some time. But yeah, brush priming is valid. You can either use gesso, like we've talked about a little bit earlier. I should really do a video about gesso, I think. Or you can use, a couple of different companies do make just brush-on primer. I know Reaper makes brush-on primer, and I've used it before. Like if I've primed something with a spray can or something like that and then missed some parts, like it didn't get underneath the arm or whatever, I'll go back with that. I like that stuff. I use their brush-on primer a lot for the ridges around the bases of my models a lot of times because it covers really nicely, so yeah. Christopher asks, have you tried the Marvel Miniatures game yet? I played again yesterday and I'm liking it more and more each time. It always feels cinematic and is a solid rule set. I have not. I don't know anybody up here who plays either that one or the Batman one or any of those from Night Models. So I know that some of the guys down in the southern part of the state, down there where you are, do, but I have not played it, or I'd like to check out a demo. I'm hoping to check out a demo of it at Adepticon. I like to do a lot of demos at Adepticon because then it just gives me the ability to talk more about games that I might not otherwise get to play. So I can at least say, oh, well, the rules work this way if somebody asks me. But like right now, I have no idea about the Marvel Miniatures game. I know that they did it, and I know that it's got superheroes and stuff like that. And the models that I've seen do look pretty good, but I don't really know much about the mechanics of it at all. So. Marcus asks, off topic, do all the starter packs have the exact same points? I don't believe so, no. They're all the same cost. They all the start collecting boxes from Games Workshop, whether you buy them for 40K or for Age of Sigmar, I believe are all $85. But I'm pretty sure they don't have the same points. So yeah. Uncommon says, Adam, when do you want to shave your beard off next? I've not really ever shaved my beard for, well, let's see, 15 plus years. I'm kind of, because winter is coming, as they say, I've kind of been letting this part sort of go to see what happens with it. Just this part for the most part. But yeah, I don't generally do that too much. It's I'm kind of a bearded guy. It's the way it works. If you like the Marvel game, try the Batman game too. Batman seems more tactically in-depth and is more of a gang versus gang game. That's interesting. I should look and see if I can find some bat reps online. I'll do some searching around, see if I can find some bat reps, just because those can sometimes help give you a little bit of flavor. I'm betting probably, what's his name? Ash Barker. I would think he's probably done some of those on, what's his channel called? Guerrilla Miniatures Games, I think is what his channel is called. And he does a lot of bat reps. It's like that's the majority of what he does. And I bet you he's probably done some of that, yeah. Six Gunner says, got inspiration to make Wisconsin-styled fried fish with coleslaw, and it was great. Well, fried fish is pretty good, I will tell you that. Let's see here. Wouldn't surprise me if Games Workshop even came with pre-painted miniature line at some point to get more people into the hobby, but not this year. Pre-painted miniatures are hard. You know, Fantasy Flight had a kind of a long situation of them trying to get, like, there were, when X-Wing first started, there were times when ships would go out of stock and you just couldn't get them because they couldn't paint them fast enough. It's taken them several years to get to the point now where they can kind of really fix their production schedule for that kind of stuff, and now it's rare that you find ships that are out that you just can't get, it seems. So they've gotten that stuff dialed in, but I'm sure they had to throw a ton of money at it. I don't know that Games Workshop will ever come up with pre-paints. The fact that they're doing in colored plastic, I think, is a step, and that's great, but I don't think that, I mean, I don't, because they look at their hobby as being a hobby, I don't know that they'll do that. I don't know that they would do pre-paints like that. Let's see here. I'm painting my Skaven Blood Bowl team, and while listening to you, it takes, like, forever. What do you think about Blood Bowl? I used to play Blood Bowl back in the day, and I enjoyed it. I didn't play it rabidly, and like after it was out of print, I kind of didn't play it again for quite some time. But it's a cool game, and I'm looking forward to starting to get into it again. I guess they've tweaked the rules ever so slightly, but otherwise it's predominantly the same game. So that's cool. I know that Mini Wargaming did recently do 3 bat reps based off the new rules, but then they had to take them down right away because they'd gotten a lot of the rules wrong. Because the guys who'd been playing were guys who played the video game quite a bit. So they're like, oh, well, because the video game is very tabletop-like. Like, you hear dice rolling in the background. You see the dice sometimes on the table. And but as it turns out, the rules are not identical to the tabletop version. So there was some problems there, and I think they reshot them and then did them and everything like that. But, yeah. And I've played a little bit of the video game on the PlayStation 4. But, since back in the day. Because I still have my original copy, which was maybe version 2, maybe version 1. I don't remember, but it's old. I used to play it back in the early 90s. So I need to take a nose break again. I apologize. Just a sec. All right. I apologize again. Let's see here. So anyone got a suggestion for what I should build for my next 40k army? I've got Space Marines, Tau, Dark Eldar, Imperial Guard, DW. What the heck is DW? I'm not quite sure what DW is. Tyrannid and Mixed Chaos Forces, and GSC. I'm not sure if I know what that is either, Blake. So you've got most of them. Necron, probably Necrons. And Necrons can be painted quite quickly. You pretty much, I mean, there's the standard, prime them black and dry brush them silver, and then do a couple of little touch-ups. But yeah. The Canadian Barbarian says, "Yep, Ash is starting Batman and has done Marvel. He played X-Men. That's cool. Yeah, I watch some of his stuff. I do. It's cool. Azarathema, I can't pronounce that. Hi, Adam. Your video about dedicated workspace helped me to realize how important that is. So now I'm setting up a table in the corner of my room just for that. Hope my cat won't mess up. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Your cat will mess it up. Just FYI, cats are sneaky like that, and they will hop up on stuff. The only reason my hobby stuff is relatively unmolested by cats is because I don't let the cats in the basement. But yeah, back when we used to live in a different place, I would be working on my computer, which was 180 degrees. If I was sitting in a chair, if I turned 180 degrees, my hobby stuff was here, my computer was here, and I'd be doing stuff, and I would just hear the slightest noise behind my head, and I would turn around, and I would see our cat at the time, and she would be standing amongst all the paints and the brushes and my stuff, just like she'd gotten onto the table almost completely silently, and then just like tapped a brush that touched another brush in a cup. And that's the only way I knew she was there. And there was no good reason for her to be there. Nothing to eat, But she would be there on that thing, and I'd be like, I have to carefully pick her up and put her back down on the ground. So, yeah, cats are sneaky that way. And there's some other cat-related shenanigans going on, it seems like, in the living room, which Emily and my wife is going to check. Let's see here. Hey, Uncle Adam, have you seen that Games Workshop has re-released 4th edition Space Hulk? What do you think about that? Yeah, I did. I think that was really smart of them, because they always made it more limited edition. Like, since they released 3rd edition in 2007 or 2008, I think. And there was the big limited edition thing. People had to get in on it right away, and then it was $250 on eBay and all that stuff. And then they put out another kind of release of it 4 years ago. And then, I had done a video saying gateway games are really a thing. They help get people in the hobby, and it would be really smart if Games Workshop would, keep Space Hulk in stock so people could keep buying it at any time, because it helps it's what got me into the hobby. The original Space Hulk back in the 90s is how I got into miniatures, basically, when I was in college. So I think it's smart of them to keep it in stock, and I think if they decide from now on just to keep it in stock in general so that people can always buy it, I think that'll be good for the hobby. It'll be good for Games Workshop. Like I said just recently, they are starting to do some things that are smarter. So, thank goodness for that, because they being the biggest really helps the hobby in general. Just because you may not like Games Workshop, which is fine, but the fact that it is popular, your local shop probably has more money to spend on things, or your local shop has more paints to choose from, or your local shop has people there who are, hanging out playing GW stuff, and then you can come in and go, hey, have you guys ever looked at Bolt Action or Malifaux or whatever? And so it just, there's this saying about rising tides raises all boats. It's the same kind of thing, so it helps. Let's see here. You should build an Age of Sigmar army. I don't know if that's directed at me. I have 2 of them already, and a third not built, but down there in the basement. DW, Deathwatch. Oh yeah, GSC is Gene Stealer Cult. Those are abbreviations. Gotcha. Yeah. Let's see here. Daniel says I need some classical technical difficulties background music for your off-screen time. Yeah, no, that's a good point. If I could, I know I could do something like that where I could click to a scene in XSplit, which is the software I use here to be able to switch between cameras and stuff, and do the graphics and all that jazz in the stream. I know I can make a video. If I can make a video that would loop, then I could just have it run and do the music and stuff like that in the background. I should look into that. That's a good point. That'd be sort of fun. Let's see. Adam, will you be teaching any classes at Adepticon this year? I am not. That is not part of my plan for this year. I did last year. I taught 2 classes about basically YouTubing and stuff. But no, I'm not going to be teaching any classes this year. Maybe next year. I just kind of want to break it up from time to time. So let's see here. Talek says that pets are terrible and fantastic. They're more fantastic generally than terrible, in my opinion. But yeah, they can be like that. Let's see. Adepticon sounds like a great convention, but pretty far from Virginia. Any similar conventions on the East Coast, specifically Mid-Atlantic? The only convention that I know of on the East Coast is in I think Providence, Rhode Island. That's a good size one. It's called Templecon, and I've always kind of been interested in going, but we never have. I've never been to Rhode Island, so there's that too. But yeah, Templecon, from what I understand, it's a little bit more War Machine heavy. I don't know if it's the developers, or not the developers, the organizers of the convention are bigger War Machine fans, or if it just sort of happened organically. Maybe there's just a big War Machine and Hordes group in that area, something like that. These things kind of happen from time to time, where all of a sudden somebody is just like, well, this is what, you start out with one thing and you've got this plan to make a convention or whatever, but then things just sort of evolve over time, and then your convention is this other thing, which is fine. I notice when I get out of full screen on the phone, the Tabletop Minions bug disappears from the bottom right corner of the screen, but the larger insignia stays. Strange. Well, the trick is that the insignia up here is actually in the video, and because I'm doing it in XSplit, which is the software I use, the Tabletop Minions, same exact logo that you see sometimes down in this bottom corner, is actually an overlay that YouTube puts in. So yeah, it will get rid of it in certain phone resolutions or certain screen resolutions and things like that. It's just kind of a thing. Like all the videos, I've always got the little bug down here pretty much, but when I'm doing the live show, I've got this extra one up here, which is in the video as opposed to it's technical dork stuff, but that's why that's happening. The Solo Wargaming Show says, how much are Adepticon tickets with swag, and are they all sold out yet? I believe that they are $50 or $55 with swag. I'm not sure. And I suspect they're all sold out, but I don't know that for sure. I actually did not buy the swag bag this year. This was the first year. So in the past, the way it worked with Adepticon, I think it's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to start talking about Adepticon, which will be fun. So Adepticon is this great convention. For those of you that don't know, it's outside of Chicago, Illinois. It's in a smaller, it's kind of a suburb, sort of. Maybe Matt will back me up or not on that. So Schaumburg is a town outside of Chicago, and it is northwest. I think it's northwest of Chicago. And this convention, Adepticon, has been going for 15 years, 16 years, something like that. I believe that last year was known as Adepticon 13? I don't know. It's been going on for more than a decade. And it started out basically as a big 40K tournament. I mean, it was much smaller when it started than it is now. Now it is about 3,500 attendees over the course of 4 days. It's like a Wednesday, or well, some of it stuff starts on Wednesday night, but for the most part, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 3,500 attendees in this humongous convention center in Schaumburg, Illinois. And when it first started, it was considerably smaller, and it was a 40K tournament. They got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they started to expand into all kinds of other stuff, and now it's predominantly all kinds of different miniatures. And it's a lot of tournaments, but it's also seminars, it's also demos, there's a huge painting competition that happens there called the Crystal Brush, which is run by Cool Mini or Not. The grand prize for the Crystal Brush is $10,000. So if you're best in show at the Crystal Brush, you win 10 grand, which brings people from all over the world, frankly, for the painting competition alone. A lot of people come from overseas to go to just because it's such a great convention, but it's just tabletop wargaming. Over the last couple of years, like at night, there's some board gaming that goes on, just because people have been playing miniatures all day and they want to do a board game, or maybe they're there with their spouse and their spouse is more into board gaming or whatever. So there's a little bit of board gaming that goes on at the night time generally, but it's predominantly all war game, and it's great. So it used to be that when you signed up, they would start the sign-ups at 8 p.m. Central Time on a specific day in November, an evening in November. And the first 1,000 people who signed up would get this thing known as a swag bag. So you'd pay your money to go, and you would get this swag bag, which was a bunch of stuff that was kind of like donated by the vendors. There's a vendor hall at Adepticon, and it used to be, I believe, that the vendors didn't pay really to have a booth, but they had to give X amount of stuff that would then get stuffed into the swag bags. So the last couple of years, 3-4 years, like games or what's his name there, Privateer Press, like you would get the swag bag. If you got the swag bag, it would usually have a battle box in it for either War Machines or Hordes. I think last year it had a 2-player Hordes battle box in it, you know, that 2-player thing that they did, which was cool. But yeah, so that was the swag bag thing, but you had to get in quick to get it. Well, this year they decided, you know, some people just don't kind of want the swag bag, so they kind of actually lowered the price. So now if you don't want the swag bag, it's only $30, because that shit gives you the ticket, so you can get in and play in tournaments and you can play and stuff. Because when you add on events and things like that, they all have their own kind of separate cost for the most part. If you go play a demo from a company, that generally doesn't cost anything. But if there's any kind of event, whether it's a narrative event, a campaign event, a tournament event, seminars, all that stuff, they generally have a cost. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting that way. And that's the way they work. But this year they decided to not do the swag bag. Now, the last several years I have done, after Adepticon, an Adepticon booty video where I talk about the stuff that I bring back from Adepticon. And in the past, I've brought back and showed you, here's the stuff that's in the swag bag. So this year I won't be doing that. But instead, I'm just going to be showing you the other stuff that I got at Adepticon. So there'll still be a booty video. It'll just be the things that I actually bought versus here's the stuff in the bag. The bag is fine. Some people love it, and that's great. I've always been kind of like, oh, hey, here's a paint. Here's like a single model from a company I've not heard of. Here's a postcard. Here's a, you know. And so the bag itself that they give you, like it's like one of those little weird sort of drawstring backpack things. I guess that's great if you didn't bring your own bag, but most people, at least I always bring my own bag. I prepare. So, yeah, it's not exactly... I'm glad that they're giving us the option now, frankly. It's very nice. Let's see here. I did a thing, if I can find it. Here we go. So here's the Adepticon 2017 website. Adepticon is coming up in March. It is March like 23rd or something. And so, yeah, so registration opened since the last live show I did. So it was not last week Thursday, but maybe the Thursday before. And or a couple nights before Thanksgiving. I forget exactly what night it was, but registration opened then. And when it did that, you know, you signed up. And when you sign up, you also can sign up for events. So they have all the events in there. There's big, huge events like the 40K Championships is humongous. There's 40K Team Tournament. There's Age of Sigmar events. There's Malifaux events. There's Infinity events. There's all kinds of different events. And if you want to make sure you get signed up in there, even if you don't want the swag bag, if you want to get into an event, you better be there like when it opens at 8, you know, and it worked pretty well this year. There was no crashing of the website that I saw. I was able to get in and get the stuff that I wanted. And yeah, it was pretty cool. So I like it a lot. It's a great convention. Blood Shadow just asked a question related to Adepticon. For wargaming, is Adepticon better than Gen Con? I would say yes. I'm a fan of Gen Con, don't get me wrong, and every gamer out there, if they can, should eventually make the pilgrimage and go to Gen Con. But if you really like wargaming, I've mentioned it like this to people before. It's like Gen Con is a fishing convention, and Adepticon's like a trout fishing convention. They're very, you know, it's a sub niche or whatever of gaming. Gaming, you know, Gen Con is, you know, Magic the Gathering and world, you know, everything out there, D&D and board games and everything, LARPing. Whereas Adepticon is predominantly just tabletop wargaming. So if you like tabletop wargaming, it's the place to go. It's a great convention. It really is. It's not super huge, so that's great because like Gen Con's about 60,000 people now over 4 days, and it can be really, really tight in there sometimes. You know, it's a big place, but still, it's yeah, it's not my it's not my favorite convention anymore. Gen Con is not. Adepticon's my favorite convention. Plus, frankly, for me, it's like a 3-hour drive to get to Adepticon, and it's almost a 7-hour drive to get to Gen Con. So, you know, I don't like to drive much if I can help it. So there's that too. But yeah, let's see here. So anyway, this is the Adepticon website, and you guys can still see that, right? Okay. So registration opened a little while back, November 21st, I guess, or somewhere around there. And it allows you basically to, like I said, get yourself a ticket. There's 109 days left until Adepticon, so we've got that going for us. I've already got my room booked and all that jazz. And then we've got the event information. Where the heck? Okay, registration. So we go over here to Adepticon registration, and they show you the different event list. I signed up only for 2 things so far, myself. I signed up for basically I'm going to be taught how to play Team Yankee. Team Yankee is from the same guys that do Flames of War, which is the World War II tank game, that kind of thing. Team Yankee is kind of a World War III. It's a fictional, like late 80s, there was all of a sudden kind of a blow-up skirmish in East Germany versus West Germany, something like that, maybe mid-80s. So it's slightly more modern stuff. It's M1 Abrams versus, I don't know, T-72s or whatever, that kind of stuff. And it's not just a whole bunch of World War II stuff. It's fancier stuff. There's attack helicopters and things like that. So I'm going to play a demo of that, or something that's a little bit more than a demo. They're not calling it a demo, but you don't have to bring your own stuff. They have all the stuff there for you. So I'm going to be taught the rules, and in my mind it's a demo, but they're not saying it's a demo. The other thing I'm playing currently is there's a Car Wars game. So Car Wars is a old school game system made by Steve Jackson Games, and Car Wars is neat because it's kind of post-apocalyptic to some degree, but it was about building and designing like your own car, and then having battles on the highways and byways of America versus other people and stuff. And it's a cool system, and I used to play it all the time in college, and so I haven't played it in forever, and now I'm looking to do that. So I'm looking forward to kind of playing that as well at Adepticon. So let's see here. What else have we got? Like I said, Duncan from Wargaming TV or Warhammer TV, he's going to be doing a painting seminar, which I'm sure is already sold out. So let's see here. Some of the things that we see, this is on Thursday the 23rd. There's Battletech Grinder, which is happening all weekend. War Machine Hordes Iron Arena. These are things that happen all weekend long. You can just have spaces set up. You can go there and play and get points. And then the people who play that event the most and get the most points very frequently get some sort of prizes and things like that. There's Malifaux's doing a Achievement League, things like that. Right away, 8 a.m. on Thursday, there's an Age of Sigmar Vanguard tournament. There's a Age of Sigmar War Host tournament. I'm frankly not sure what the difference is. War Host is 2,500 point 3-round slugfest, so that'll be interesting. Whereas the other one consists of 3 rounds in a fun and fast environment. Doesn't say how many points. That's weird. It could be just open. I'm not sure. So yeah. They've got a lot of different things here. The big Warhammer 40K Championship starts on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and runs till 10:30 p.m. And that's just the first day. Then the second day is basically after that, the Warhammer Championship, I think, is max maybe 256 players. So it's a humongous number. It's very big. And then at the end of it, the top 16 move on to I think it's the top 16 or the top 8 move on to the next day. And so and they usually I don't want to say televise it, but they usually stream it. So that's kind of cool. Guild Ball's getting into stuff. They're doing their regional cup. Got the 40K Gentlemen's Tournament. That's interesting. War Machine Hordes Tournament. Fantasy Battles. So there's 9th Age for those of you who don't like Age of Sigmar and wanted to go into the next thing after Fantasy. They've got a 9th Age big brawl. And then here's a seminar. So, Dirt and Scenes Done Dirt Cheap. This is about lifelike landscapes can be designed with everyday materials that don't break the bank. This class will be a blend of storytelling, scenic diorama theory, demonstration, and practical hands-on application. They have a lot of hobby seminars, which are really great for people. This one has 0 remaining capacity, so it's already sold out. And it costs $27 to go to it. Now, the seminars can cost whatever the person who's running it kind of basically wants to make the price, but a lot of times when it's more like this, like it's $27, you're going to get stuff. During the class, you will begin constructing your own scene using the provided materials and techniques for quick and impressive results. I think, if I remember correctly, this woman, Michelle, did a class last year that I took about how to paint like blood and pus and gross stuff, which is great for Nurgle, frankly. So I took the class and I got a bunch of materials. Like, she gave each of us a little box of materials and said, here you go, here's the stuff. And then, you can take that home with you, and now you have the stuff. So that's why some of the seminars can be a bit more expensive, because you're getting materials with it. The other seminars where you're just sitting there and listening are usually $5, $6, $7, that kind of stuff. It's like, here's an airbrushing master class, how to paint an orc bust by Angel Giraldez. I'm pronouncing that terribly. He's an amazing painter. He really is. He does a lot of work for Infinity, and that cost is $67, but I'm betting that you're getting the orc bust with it, so it's probably, it's a big deal. But there's a lot of different hobby seminars and things like that that are really, I think, kind of interesting. So, like I said, I've signed up for two games. I'm going to go back through and look again just to see, because that's the thing that's nice too, is that you can always add stuff. Like, just because you don't have to sign up for it all on the first night. You know what I mean? You can go back later and go, oh, well, there's still some room in this class. Maybe I might take that. And you want to look at your schedule and figure out, like what time you have. And you obviously don't want to get things that overlap, because nobody likes that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I always enjoy it. The really big thing about Adepticon that I find is that it's just a great social environment. It's a great place to just be able to talk with people who do almost the exact same thing you do. Going to Gen Con, if you were sitting at a table having a hamburger or whatever and paying way too much for the convention food at Gen Con, and you're talking to somebody, they may be into RPGs and you're only into CCGs, you just only play Magic and they only play Pathfinder, and you don't have a lot to talk about necessarily because they're very different. Whereas if you're at Adepticon, yeah, that person might play Malifaux and you might play, only Age of Sigmar, but you can talk about painting, you can talk about building, converting, or whatever. You guys are a little bit more aware of each other, that kind of stuff. So, yeah. It's a great, just for the social aspect is great, and that kind of stuff. My plan, so those of you who saw my coverage this last year, 2016, earlier in the beginning of the year, I did a bunch of different videos. I did some videos that were me just using my camera, and I'm going to probably do some of that again this year, and just doing real quick little videos, trying to do a video every day of just quick little videos about, like, oh, here's the Infinity Room, it's really cool, and stuff like that. And I can actually edit on my phone, which is crazy, and then, publish it from there. And those turned out okay, and to be perfectly honest, none of the videos, it seems, for Adepticon ever get much in the way of views. They don't get nearly as many views as my other videos, but I still enjoy doing them, because I personally believe that there are people out there who enjoy watching these videos to some degree. I love watching videos from conventions that I've never been to, because that's like I get to get at least a feel of what the convention's like. But neither here nor there. So basically what I'm going to be doing this year is I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that again. But if you do watch some of the videos from 2016, I also did an interview with Wargamer Girl, Miranda, from her channel, and then Codex Dan, who used to work at Mini Wargaming. I had the two of them come in together. We did a quick interview in my hotel room. I set up lights and all that stuff because I'm that kind of dork. And we talked about War Machine, because they're both big War Machine players, and I've never been a real big War Machine player, but I have people ask me about it quite frequently, so I wanted to talk to them. This was just before Mark III was announced, but I asked them a bunch of questions in this little interview thing. You'll also, if you go back, this is about March of 2016, if you go back through my feed and look at the videos, you'll also see me interview moderator Matt here from the chat. He and his business partner Anton, and they do Rec Age. They're Hyacinth Games. So I interviewed those two guys too in the hotel room, and I'm thinking this year, on Saturday I want to do a whole bunch. I just want to set up the lights on Saturday in the hotel room and just do a bunch of interviews from the hotel room. And I want to get those scheduled a little bit on Thursday and Friday, and then just have them just bang out a whole bunch of them on Saturday, get them out of the way, and then release them after those I'll get released after I get home, because I'll have to edit those on the computer as opposed to on the phone. I'm not going to do those because I'm shooting those on regular cameras as opposed to shooting them on my phone. So yeah, that's kind of my plan for this year for Adepticon. Is I want to try to do those types of interviews. I'm going to do other shots and things like that and whatever, but I'm definitely going to do the Adepticon booty video after I get back and all that. But my plan is to try to do more interviews this year and see how that goes. I'm also looking to hopefully do... I don't know. I've thought about doing a meetup. I've done meetups at other conventions before. Like back when I was with Beasts of War, we decided to have a meetup, and very few people showed up. But this was, geez, this was 4 years ago, maybe more, 4 or 5 years ago. At this point now, I'm wondering to see if I can't maybe do some sort of Adepticon meetup. I mean, I do see people when I'm at the convention. People come up and say hi, and we talk and things like that. And sometimes they take pictures and stuff, and it's great. It's a lot of fun. But I was thinking about having some sort of event, maybe. I don't know. I haven't completely decided yet, but we'll see how it goes. And definitely, come by and see Matt and Anton at Adepticon. He's down there in the chat, and you can see it if you're looking at the chat. Because yeah, they'll be running demos of Wreckage. There's the thing that's great about Adepticon too is you can come across all the vending stuff is all stuff that we're interested in. When you go to Gen Con, there's booths for cosplay, and there's booths for anime, and there's booths for a lot of gamer adjacent stuff. But when you go to Adepticon, it's all terrain, models, games, paints. It's all that stuff. Every vendor booth is all completely related to what we like to do. So and there's a lot of companies that are like giving demos of their games, real quick demos, so you can kind of get a feel of the rules and how they work, and it works out really nicely. So yeah, I'm looking forward to. Like I've said, I don't know how many times before, Adepticon is my favorite convention, and if you can get the chance to do it, you should really try to go because it's great. It's absolutely great. Oh hey, Family Gamers, I know you. Let's see here. How you doing, Sarge? Cool. All right. Let's see here. What else have we got going on? Start collecting boxes are a great value. Dave is not wrong. That is very true. There should be a start collecting box for the Skaven clans. For all the Skaven clans. Yeah, because I was going to say there is a start collecting box for Pestilence. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, they don't have it for all the clans. That's true. Yeah. A good game to get your board game friends into minis is Super Dungeon Explorer. It turned a friend who used to just play games into a painter with its chibi anime style. That is what we would call a classic gateway game. Super Dungeon Explorer is a classic gateway game because it comes across very board game-ish, but yet it teaches you not only about manipulating models and line of sight and range and movement and things like that, but it also does give you when you're all of a sudden like, oh, these models are really neat. I like those. If you're into the chibi stuff, like these are cool, and then you start to see somebody who starts to paint them and things like that. Blood Bowl is great for that exact same thing, and so is like a lot of different games. I did a whole video about gateway games. I have to just a second. I have to cough. I apologize. Oh, I didn't turn off the microphone, did I? Hello. The microphone's still working? Can you hear me? You might have heard the cough. I think I didn't push the button properly. Let's see. So yeah, a lot of different gateway games like Space Hulk, Blood Bowl. What's another great one that's like more board gaming? Cool Mini or Not are doing a bunch of them. Well, Zombicide, Blood Rage, kind of. Rum and Bones. Rum and Bones is one that I'm really interested in. I went to a local convention where they were going to run a demo, and then I don't think it happened, and so I didn't get to do it. But I kind of wanted to. I'm going to try it again to get into the demo of it at Adepticon if I can. I'd like to, because I'm interested in Rum and Bones. The pirate thing is sort of cool. The way that it's basically Rum and Bones is like a boarding party like combat between two pirate ships. You have these cardboard pirate ships that are down there, and then you have your models, and it's basically pirates versus like ghost pirates, is from what I can tell from the box, and it looks kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to it. Oh hey, Matthias is here. Cool. Matthias is one of the guys who runs Adepticon. And I've interviewed him before for Beasts of War, and I think also for my own channel. And he's a great guy, and it's a great convention, which I've mentioned several times before. So yeah, cool. I'm glad to see Matthias. I see Sarge there, who Sarge is part of the Wargamers Consortium, and I see him at Adepticon all the time. And I just saw Coach, aka Family of Gamers 777. You should check out their stuff, their channels as well. So yeah, it's great. Let's see here. Colton says you heard the cough. Yeah, I must not hit the button right. That happens. I apologize. Six Gunner says, I've got an idea to make a Game of Thrones style conversion in Frostgrave. Soldiers and barbarians as wildlings and Night's Watch versus the undead. Still looking for models to use as White Walkers. Well, you could use Zombicide models, maybe. Oh, you know what would be cool? Not Zombicide, the normal models, but the Zombicide Black Plague models, because then they would look kind of fantasy. You could use some of those, paint them up like White Walkers. They might work pretty well. That could be really cool. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. That could work out real well. Family of Gamers says, I think it was smart that the con reduced the price of the ticket. I agree. I'd rather spend the money on stuff that I actually want. I agree. I agree, Coach. I think that when I heard about them saying, well, there's now a faction, basically a ticket you can get that is not you don't get the swag bag or whatever, that kind of thing. But if you still want to get the swag bag, you just pay like the normal price that you used to pay, but now there's a cheaper for people who don't want the swag bag. I think that was a super smart idea because, yeah, exactly. The people who then didn't spend the extra $25 or $30 for the swag bag are probably going to put that money into buying stuff from the vendors, which obviously makes the vendors happier, which, that whole thing. So yeah, I think it was a really smart plan, and I'm glad that they did it. I think we'll see probably some other really kind of smart things coming out of that convention as the time goes forward. They've started producing their own. I don't know if any of you, or probably a bunch of you, are familiar with these mats that you see now, these printed like neoprene mats. It's kind of like a very skinny mouse pad, and people will buy them 3 foot by 3 foot, 4 foot by 4 foot, 4 foot by 6 foot, and they'll put these things together, these mats, and do they'll have like grass printed on them or wastelands or roads, and you use them for playing the gaming on. And they've come around the last 4 or 5 years. They've become a bigger and bigger thing. Adepticon has started producing their own that you can buy at the convention. It's even part of the sign up when you say, I want to buy a ticket and I want to sign up for these 3 things. Oh, and I want to throw in a mat too that I'm going to pick up when I come in there. I think it's a really smart idea. They've gone to doing a lot of the mats for their own tournaments, so they don't have to build all these boards that everything. They still do here and there, but they don't have to build as many. They can just print out a bunch of mats. They're easier to store. It's a smart thing. I like to use the mats myself. I have 3 different mats from Table War / Frontline Gaming, and that I've got down in the basement. They're all 4x4s, and I like them a lot. But I'm probably going to pick up an Adepticon one, I think, this year. I was keeping an eye out on them, and I'm interested. So I think they have like an urbanish one that I'm going to look at. So sorry about that. I just noticed someone talking about not muting the microphone. Yeah, sorry about that. I missed that. But yeah, so them moving into that more of the Adepticon, moving more into the merchandise stuff. You can always buy like sweatshirts and t-shirts and the pint glasses and all that kind of stuff, but now moving into more of the gaming stuff. They've been selling the dice for a long time too, which is great. I love to buy the dice, but now with the definite, like the mats, I think are really, really cool. So that's another neat thing that you can find out from the Adepticon stuff. Let's see here. Sang Shao says, haha, my parrot just coughed after Adam did. Oh, well, that's fun. I did not know that parrots would do that. That's a lot of fun. JJT Rocking, that's a good question, says, Adam, is it a bad idea to put texture on the side of the bases? It's a personal preference. I don't usually ever do it. I usually like to keep the rim, so we're talking about the base on a model. There's usually, you have texture and stuff on the top, right? But then he's asking, or she, I'm not sure, is asking, is the edge a good place to put texture? I don't generally like to do so, but then also part of that is because I put my models in like foam. Like I have cases where there's little slots that you put the models in foam, and I would think that putting too much texture on the sides of the bases would get caught on the foam a bunch. So that's the only downside that I can think to do it. But if you like the look of it, knock yourself out. That's a cool way to do it. Let's see here. Why is there no Games of Thrones tabletop mini wargaming? I would say probably the reason there's not a Game of Thrones wargame is probably due to the licensing. So when a company like Mantic does a wargame version of the Walking Dead comic or Mars Attacks, or they do a lot of different branded stuff, they have to go to the creators or the people who hold, not necessarily the creators, but the company that holds all the rights on that particular property. They have to go talk to them, and they have to work out a deal and generally pay to make their game using the IP from that company. Just like Games Workshop has to work out a deal with the companies that use their stuff to make video games. Ronnie and those guys, let's say at Mantic, have to pay the company that owns the rights to the Walking Dead comic book so that they can make their Walking Dead game. You'll notice that game doesn't use any of the footage from the TV show or any stills or shots because they're technically, I guess, legally two separate license holders. So they thought probably that it was going to be cheaper to do the comic book version as opposed to the TV show, because the TV show is so crazy popular in a wider audience. So yeah, I suspect if somebody paid enough and said, hey, we want to do it, someone eventually would be able to, but I'm sure that the price is probably quite high to get the tabletop wargaming rights from Game of Thrones. I mean, Games Workshop did a huge kind of thing in getting Lord of the Rings rights and also The Hobbit as well. That may have not necessarily worked out super well in the long run because those games didn't really set the modeling world on fire, but there's still a lot of people who do enjoy it, and they still do sell it, and they're kind of bringing it back a little bit into Forge World and the Specialist Games line. So, there's a lot of legal stuff that goes on in the background about that kind of licensing and things like that, and that's why you can't just go and say, well, I'm going to make a game about this without getting the proper permissions and usually paying a royalty or a fee or something like that to make that happen. Hey Adam, are you going to be playing Rogue Stars when it comes out? I hope to at least get a book. That's the game, I believe, from it's from Osprey, but it's written by Andrea, who wrote the Song of Blades and Heroes and all the other kind of offshoots of Song of Blades and Heroes from Ganesha Games. So yeah, I'm hoping to get a chance to check it out. I've really been enjoying some of the stuff that Osprey's been putting out. Frostgrave is amazing, and then I also picked up Lion Rampant, which is just a thin little book, but it's more historical. Fantasy historical. Well, not fantasy. I take that back. Medieval historical. Dragon Rampant is the actual fantasy version of the same type of rules, and now Rogue Stars. I'm interested in it, definitely. Let's see here. The mousepad mats are fantastic. Our local game shop has several, and they really hold up and they look great. Yeah, I like them a lot because they do have a really nice look to them. They just, some people really only like to play on a really three-dimensional, crazy-looking mat, and that's fine. They're really hard to store. They're really hard to carry around. When I go to my local shop and I want to play a game of Age of Sigmar, I grab one of those three mats. They come in their own cloth case with a shoulder strap. I just throw over my shoulder, and I throw my battle foam bag over the other shoulder, and I'm out the door, and I go to the shop, I lay it down, and it works out great. So they look good, and they're very portable and easy to use that way. They're not as cool as a full 3D crazy-looking board, but like I said, those full crazy-looking boards are sometimes really hard to truck around, especially to conventions. I'm always amazed when I go to conventions and I see a really super fancy 4x6 board that's really three-dimensional and it's got streams, not of real water, but resin running through it and stuff like that, so it looks like real water. I'm just thinking, how the heck did they get that here? You know what I mean? Especially at places like Gen Con. It's not something you're going to keep in your hotel room. You know what I mean? It's just it's a big kind of deal. But those mats can be really easy to carry around, so they help a lot. What model is the tentacle guy in your Chaos Age of Sigmar army? That is Gutrot Spume. Gutrot, G-U-T-R-O-T. Spume is S-P-U-M-E, I believe. He is a named character, Nurgle-based he was a fun model to paint. I really like him. He's kind of cool. His stats are, well, actually his normal just attack weapon stats are actually pretty good. His special abilities are meh. Like he can be a commander. He's a hero, so he can be a commander. His commander ability is really kind of dumb. Like it's not useful, and I've never used it. But his regular kind of ability, which is called clasping or something about pseudopods or something like that. Basically, at the beginning of the combat phase, if you're in hand to hand, if you're base to base with somebody, Gut Rot is base to base with another character or another whatever. Gut Rot can pick one of their weapons and say, I'm going to try to grab that with my tentacles. And if he does successfully do it, then that person will not be able to use that weapon for that rest of that turn. You just do a simple roll off against each other. Each of you rolls a 6-sider, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But that can really shut down like a big creature when it's got like some big huge club, and all of a sudden you're like, nope, you can't use that because I'm grabbing it. That can really be rough on some of those characters. So I like him, and he's got just general good attacks. He's got 6 or 7 attacks or something like that. He's got a lot of attacks, and he's pretty powerful, and he looks great. I like the model a lot. So Saber says, in your terrain videos, when you show old terrain, they have posters on the walls. How do you do that? I have done it before where I've just literally just designed the little posters and then just printed them out on my printer and then just cut them out and then just kind of glued them onto the walls. It's not a real difficult thing. Like I don't paint them onto the walls. That would be a pain in the rear. And since I'm a graphic designer, by trade, it's part of my trade. I just make the little posters and it works out real well. And I've got a color laser printer upstairs, but you could do it with inkjet too. You just have to be a little careful, I think, to make sure that the glue doesn't make the ink run in the poster. So you might have to use Mod Podge or whatever that stuff is, maybe to kind of seal it. But with a laser printer, you don't have to worry about it as much. So I've been doing that. It's a lot of fun. Adam, have you ever looked into dystopian wars, especially the naval air battles? I played at Gen Con years ago, not Dystopian Wars, but another game made by the same company, Firestorm Armada, I think. I did a demo of that, and it was cool. I've never been super big into ship combat, just basic, whether it's spaceships or, sailing ships. It's just never really blown my skirt up, I guess, so I never really got into it. And I know I know some people who like to play, at least Firestorm Armada. I don't know anybody who plays Dystopian Wars or the fantasy one. Dystopian Wars is kind of a steampunkish, like boats kind of battle thing, if I remember correctly. They also had a fantasy version, which I can't think of the name of, and then there was also the sci-fi version, which was called Firestorm Armada. That was the one that I did the demo in, and it was fun. But I don't know anybody else really around here who plays it. I know other people who play it further away from me. But yeah. Let's see. I do say that a lot when I'm looking because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about next. Adam, have you checked out the Batman game from Night Models? Someone asked that actually a little bit earlier. Well, no, they actually asked about the Marvel game, which is also from Night Models, from what I understand. I have not played either. I know some people in the southern part of the state that I live in Wisconsin, who play, and I would be totally up to try a demo at Adepticon. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Again, like I said, one of the big reasons to go to Adepticon is to be able to get in all kinds of demos and learn about new games. Some people use that opportunity to learn about new games that they might get into. I do that as well, but also a lot of times it's like, I'm going to play a demo of a game I'm probably never going to get into, but at least then when people ask about it, I can say, oh yeah, I played that and it's like this, or it reminds me of this, or there's a part of this that I like about it and this part I don't, or whatever. Last year we played a demo of, and by last year I mean this year, 2016, earlier in the year, we played a demo, me and a couple of friends of mine played a demo at Adepticon of Free Blades, which was, it's a fantasy kind of game, and they have their own model line and everything, and it was interesting. It wasn't exactly, I think, as well received by everybody in the group. I thought it was kind of cool, not so much that I thought I was probably going to buy it, but some of the models I thought were really cool and would work well for other games. The rule system was, I don't remember it being grating or problematic. It just wasn't it didn't wow me, but it was some of the models were really nice, and they built a really great board, and we're doing great demos all the time, like the entire weekend. So that was really cool. So my local game shop isn't a game workshop store. It sells board games, comics, miniatures, and lots of stuff. Torch, that's most of us, I think. Yeah, there's 2 games workshops in the entire state of Wisconsin, and they're both in the southern part of the state. One's near Milwaukee, like outside of Milwaukee, and one is almost right on the border with Illinois in Kenosha, question mark? I think that's where it is. But yeah, otherwise, all the other shops that we have around me, and there are a lot of them, don't get me wrong. We're blessed in having a lot of gaming shops around here, but they're all predominantly independent. So that's kind of nice. The fantasy version is called Uncharted Seas. That's, gotcha. Yep, yeah, there was Uncharted Seas, Dystopian Wars, and Firestorm Armada. From what I understand, of the 3 games, like, one of them was sort of more difficult, and then there was one that was like of a medium sort of difficulty, and then Firestorm Armada was kind of the easier one. And I think that was by design. Like, they wanted to make one that was a lot more maybe almost like simulation, and then it got gamier kind of as it went to Firestorm Armada. And like I said, I only ever played Firestorm Armada, which I believe is still in production, but Ready Netty here is saying that Uncharted Seas is canceled, so that's a bummer. And then Dystopian Legion is the new skirmish game that's also steampunkish, kind of based off of that, so that's kind of cool. Torch says Games Workshop stores won't let you play anything but Games Workshop games in my experience, and that makes sense. Sure, I mean, from what I understand, like the Games Workshop stores, at least around here, like I said, the ones that are down far south in Wisconsin, don't do, like, I don't even know that they have tables anymore. It's mostly independent stores that have tables. So, yeah, but it would make sense if you go into a Games Workshop store and you pull out Bolt Action, they'd be like, what are you doing? I get that. That makes sense. Let's see here. My first proper set was the Assault on Black Reach set. Yeah, that's a good set. If you go into stores right now that are selling the new stuff from Games Workshop, they're these new. They're not at the start collecting boxes. They are these very brightly colored boxes, and I forget what they're called, but they've got some Space Marine boxes and some Orc boxes, and they come with some paints and some glue and even like a cheapy little brush inside too, and they're to kind of get people into the hobby. And the models that are in all those boxes are basically just the old Assault on Black Reach models. So like the old Orc, boss, and the old Terminators and the Dreadnought and all the stuff from the original Assault on Black Reach box. That's the models that they're now using and putting into these really cheap, get you started with painting and gluing and all that kind of stuff kits that you're starting to see. From what I understand, like my local shop's got those kits in stock, but from what I understand, they're also trying to get those kits into like, I don't know about like Hobby Lobby, but hobby stores that sell model rockets and model airplanes and model cars. They're also trying to get these things into there too. So it's kind of interesting. And then there's also rules in those boxes too, so you can paint up these cool soldiers and you're like, oh, that's really cool. But then you can also be like, oh, well, there's a game involved with this. And again, it's another smart move to get people into the hobby and into gaming. So Joseph says, I stumbled across the Imperial Assault game, which is the Star Wars kind of gateway skirmishy game from Fantasy Flight. I stumbled across the Imperial Assault game, not for the game, but for the figures. Paint your own stormtroopers. Yeah, a friend of mine from work started out painting, like he was playing X-Wing and things like that, and got into that. And then he started playing Imperial Assault, and then he started learning about how to paint these Imperial Assault guys to make them look better. And now he's painted Sylvaneth for Age of Sigmar. If you've been seeing some of the pictures I've been posting lately, the last couple of weeks on social media, I've been playing against him at our local shop, his Sylvaneth versus my Chaos, and his stuff's looking great. I mean, it's a really amazing how just by going through and learning, by watching YouTube videos and looking at stuff on blogs and the internet, you can very quickly get much further ahead in your painting than you ever used to be able to, because you can learn so many more techniques so much more quickly. That's really a big deal, you know what I mean? So let's see here, what else have we got? Saber says, where I live it's 99% GW and 1% sod all. I'm going to say probably you're than England then. Maybe by because you say sod all, which is not a thing that Americans say too much, so I'm going to guess that. And also, just from what I understand, Games Workshop, and an English person told me this years ago, is that Games Workshop kind of pushed a lot of other independent stockists out of the country to some degree, at least. Like, it used to be that Games Workshop stores sold everybody's stuff. This is a long time ago, but they sold everybody's stuff, and then eventually they became the go-to game store, and then they stopped selling everybody else's stuff, and they only started selling their own. So, yeah, I can understand that. Around here in America, there's not nearly as many Games Workshop stores. Like I said, in the entire state of Wisconsin, which is not, I mean, it's a good size state, but it's not super populous. There's maybe 5 to 6 million people in the entire state. There's only 2 stores. There's only 2 Games Workshop stores. Whereas in the town that I live in, there's 2 game stores, like independent game stores, just in this town. And the next town over, there's another one, which is 20 minutes away. And then there's up north, there's another one that's 20 minutes away. So there's like within a hour drive of where I am currently, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different stores. So I again feel blessed about that. I'm glad for it. So Josh McCarthy says Battle for Vedros. Yes, so that's referring back to those new kits that they're putting out in the other stores with the older models in it. They are, but they're almost like getting ready for Battle of Vedros kits. They're very interesting. They're like a what do you call it? They're like because they don't. I looked on the box and it doesn't say Battle of Vedros anywhere, but they're basically the same kind of designs and the same stuff, and they come with paints, which I think is maybe the different thing. I don't know. It's interesting what they're doing. So, the USA doesn't have the population density for Games Workshop's European model to work. You're probably right in comparison to size versus density. I get that. It makes sense. I would say that probably because, like there are certain states that are much more densely populated than others, where it's a much smaller state and they've got a couple of the bigger cities in it, and then you've got some. I mean, if you go to like Wyoming, that's a very big state, or a very good sized state that only has 500,000 people, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I'm sure there's probably not there's probably not a Games Workshop store in Wyoming. I don't know that for sure, but it would make sense. I get that. It makes sense from a business point. Dorn Jr. asks, Adam, do you think there's enough troop variation in Harlequins to use them in Kill Team? Gosh, I do not know much about the crazy clown space elves, sadly. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know anything about them except that they shoot an astounding amount of shots in any given game. They just fire and fire and fire and fire and fire. So you could give them a try. I know that people will run Kill Team lists that will be literally, I think that if you use Scutari and you run Infiltrators, you can have an entire 200-point army in 5 models. Now, whether that's going to work out for you or not, I don't know. And I haven't played enough Kill Team recently to know this for sure. I have suspicions that weight of fire is going to help you a little bit more. So having 15 models versus having 5 is just going to give you, quantity as a quality all of its own kind of a situation. So that may be a benefit. So having a very small number of models might not be great. But I don't know tons about Harlequins to know whether or not there's enough troop variation. I don't think, because you can spread them all out, you don't have to keep them together in a squad like you do in normal 40K. That's one of the big things about Kill Team, is that you may buy a squad, buy points-wise for your army, but then once it's time to play, they don't have to stick within 2 inches of each other and stay in coherency. They can just kind of take off and go wherever they want. And then you do each one separately. It's not like, okay, now this unit's going to activate, and then they all do their thing. You're like, this guy's going to activate. Okay, now this guy's going to activate. This guy's going to... And you just do it that way. That's the major difference in Kill Team. So I think that's kind of interesting. And I think that maybe your Harlequins might be better off because of that, but I don't really, frankly, know a ton about it. Colton asks, hey, Adam, in Age of Sigmar, if you could choose an army to get new models or more work done, what would it be? So if there's an army out there right now that needs new models for it in Age of Sigmar, I would probably say, That's a good question. That's a very good question. I was going to say Skaven, but there's so much Skaven as it is, and honestly, those models are pretty cool. Like that Clan Pestilence Start Collecting box is really cool because you get a decent amount of stuff in there, and those plague rats are awesome, and they give you a real benefit because you can run plague rats, and then you also start to run a bunch of Nurgle stuff. Those plague rats do have the Nurgle keyword, so you're kind of dialed in there. I don't know about new models, but I think that there should be a Start Collecting box for Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers were the newer models that came out for dwarves, and there's not a Start Collecting box for Fire Slayers, and I think there ought to be, because they're kind of really interesting models, and it would probably work out pretty well. So that's, if I had to guess, I would say it would probably be that. It would make sense for them to have a something like that. As far as new models, honestly, I'd like to see some new human models. I'd like to see new Empire or Bretonnians or whatever they're going to do. If they're going to just call them free peoples or whatever, they should try to look into doing some of that, because I think that there are a lot of people out there who predominantly like to play mostly humans. Maybe they have, like I did a video a while back about prejudices about other different types of, races in wargaming. I don't like to play elves. I don't want to ever play elves, and I'm not even generally liking to play against Eldar in 40k because they're pretty tough. But so I would never run elves as an army myself. But there's just people who have those kind of things. And in those comments, a lot of people said, "Oh, well, I always like to play the humans in whatever game it is." So I think if they were to put some time and some money into making some new sculpts, I think they could do some free peoples to kind of bring and mix together the Empire and the Bretonnians, so you could kind of put them all together. They should look into that myself. I mean, because really the Stormcast don't count, in my opinion. So Philip Rules asks, what is Kill Team? Kill Team is a kind of an addition to 40k. It's an ebook that you can get for like $10 on the Apple iBookstore or on the Google Bookstore, or I think you can even get it direct from Games Workshop, maybe as a PDF. I'm not sure. And it allows you to take the 7th edition 40k rules and play a 200-point battle that's kind of specialized. You have, like I said, the squads don't have to stick together. The guys, you activate each person, each model separately, and there are other restrictions. You can't take any models with 4 wounds. You can't take anybody with a 2-up save, stuff like that. So it works out well, and it's interesting. But it's just a neat way to play 40k. I'm going to sneeze. It's coming. Just hang on a second. I apologize again. Don't let anyone ever say that I don't make sure that the show goes on. If I can. I apologize. Someone was asking about how to fill in the slaughter base. Where did I see it? Down here. Any advice for filling in slaughter bases after the model is glued in? I did a video where I talked about slaughter bases. I use the wrappers from the granola bars that I like to eat, and I just use some CA glue, and I just cut a little piece with tiny little scissors, and I just glue it over the slot, and it works out well. Otherwise, there's a lot of putties that you can use. You can use green stuff if you want to. Sometimes it's a little harder to work with, but you can use green stuff. You can use milliput, probably. I don't know what else. I know there's a green modeling putty that airplane guys use a lot. Squad putty, maybe it's called, something like that. You could try that too, I think. Let's see. I used to use. Oh, Brooke says I've used milliput, but I've admittedly been put off by some of the stuff I've read about its toxicology. Oh, I didn't realize that. So that's interesting. Just wear a dust mask when you're sanding, and don't ever lick your tools. Well, that's probably just good advice in general, honestly. And wash your hands. Let's see here. Brian says, well, BFG, which I believe would be Battlefleet Gothic, got very little coverage in comparison. Space Hulk, on the other hand, is getting hyped to hell. I would say probably because Space Hulk is... Oh, we're talking about the video games. Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I was really interested in the Space Hulk video game, and then I watched some beta play of the Space Hulk video game, and now I am not so interested in the Space Hulk video game. We'll see once it launches. I'll watch some YouTube videos about, some Let's Plays and things and see how it works out, but I was kind of not super impressed by what I saw. And this was not like beta play like from 3 months ago. This was beta play from like last week, and I believe the game comes out this week or soon. So yeah, but they are also making a Battlefleet Gothic game, from what I understand too, which I never played original Battlefleet Gothic, so I'm probably not a good judge of what's a good version of the video game or not. But it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Let's see. Hydroponos says, I use glue stick glue with baking soda to fill in gaps. That's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought of that. I use baking soda with CA glue for my bases sometimes, and then sometimes I glue those bases to my fingers. But yeah, but I've never tried glue stick glue, like a Uhu kind of glue stick glue. That's interesting. Dennis says BFG Armada is very good. Would have been a good opportunity to release those models. Oh, I didn't realize it was out. I'll have to see. I don't really play much in the way of PC games anymore, or video games much in general. I play a little bit of PlayStation 4, but not much in the way of regular PC games. So I did not realize they were doing that. Josh says Squadron Green. They also make a white putty. It's solvent based, so it's not fun to smell. Yeah, I do remember that stuff. It's also kind of gritty sometimes too. So, at least the stuff that I had. I remember buying some of it back when I first started getting into modeling, because I was basically using it to try to figure out how to fill in slotted bases. And yeah, I didn't like it a ton, frankly. Candace asks, Games Workshop made Blood Bowl with colored plastics. Privateer Press did the same with their starter boxes. What do you think about that for painting purposes? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great idea because at least it makes the models look a little bit better when people don't paint. It gets people at least something so they're like, well, at least I can tell the differences between these models more quickly, more easily. So I think it's a good idea overall. As long as the plastic's still decent, then it's great. That all being said, I would be very interested to see what you could do, like as a painter, where like, let's say with the humans in Blood Bowl, they're blue, so if you just went through and you painted the skin parts needed to be skin color, and then you painted some silver parts maybe that need to be metallic, and then you threw some washes on it, like could you get away with using the blue color of the plastic as like a blue like base coat almost, you know what I mean? That would be very interesting. And then the orcs are green, so then you would just paint the armor but then leave the skin tone the plastic color and then just throw some washes over it, just kind of see how that'd be very interesting. I just learned this recently. I didn't know about it. Over in Asia, Gundam are a type of model. They're like kind of big robots, and people put them together and paint them and all that. But the thing that's interesting about them is that they don't really paint them. The Gundam, a lot of the Gundam models, all the different parts are in different colors of plastic. So the shin guards are in a blue, and then the main part of the leg is like in a gray or whatever. And a lot of the modelers who work in that Gundam stuff put them together. And now it looks like they're pre-painted because they're already in different colors of plastics. But then what happens is those guys will then go in and do some weathering. So they'll paint kind of over, but it's very transparent paints. It's a lot of like, oh, here's some dents, here's some chips, here's some, battle wear, any kind of stuff like that. So they're using the base colors of the plastic as the base colors of the model, and then they're just enhancing and going over that. And that's very interesting. I wonder if you could do that with... the Blood Bowl models. That'd be very interesting. And you could also do the same thing exactly like with Khador, because they come in the red, and the Signar models from Privateer Press, they come in the blue. It'd be very interesting to see if you could... because you'd want to prime them somehow. That would be the problem. Unless you could figure out a way to put the paint on there without using primer. I'll have to think about that. That's an interesting thing. Let's see... Zando says he covers the hole with texture paint. Don't fill it, just put texture in a way that the hole is hidden by it at the model's feet. a lot of times putting extra texture in between their feet can kind of help anyway, because sometimes you almost, at least I do, I sometimes make it darker in between their feet to sort of add like an extra layer of shadow, kind of like, you know, on the ground between them, like they're making a shadow there, even though generally if you're playing in a room that has lights on, then they're getting a shadow anyway, but kind of accentuating that can help out a lot. Let's see. Total War Warhammer was a weird decision considering when you launch the game you see an ad for collect models in the game and then it redirects you to a page on the Games Workshop site where everything is either out of print because of fantasy going Age of Sigmar or named completely different. I have a suspicion that that's one of those deals where the company that was making the video game bought the license, let's say 3 years before they actually released the game, and maybe in that amount of time Games Workshop didn't even realize they were going to do Age of Sigmar, so you know what I mean? It's like they couldn't. The Total War series is all about rank and flank. It's all about huge groups of people running along in a group and then hitting another group of people, whereas Age of Sigmar is completely different. So it wouldn't have worked for Creative Assembly, the company that makes the Total War games, to completely change their code base so that it worked more like Age of Sigmar. Honestly, I think it makes sense. It would have been smart for them to maybe not have that part where they're like, here's a link that goes back, especially when it's stuff that you can't get anymore. I get that. But it is smart, I think, for people who miss fantasy, who can now start playing kind of fantasy sort of the way they remember in the video game realm, and it works out well that way. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what it's at. So anyway, it's 11. And I'm going to go blow my nose again, but this time I'm going to do it off air. So I appreciate that you know, people that came to watch me be all plugged up and answer questions. I hope that those of you out there who are thinking about Adepticon think about it a little bit harder and check out the website. It's adepticon.org. Adepticon is A-D-E-P as in Paul, T as in Tom, I-C-O-N as in Nancy. Adepticon. If you look it up on Google, you'll find it. You're smart people. So if you're interested, go and check it out. And it's a great convention. If you're interested in wargaming, it's a great convention. If you just live even kind of close by and you just want to check it out for like a day or whatever, just to see what it's about, it's a great convention just to go and check out as well. But if you want to go and stay and meet tons and tons of other wargamers, people who are really into the same thing that you're into and all that kind of stuff, you should definitely think about it. It's like I said, my favorite convention. It's really, really good. So I appreciate everybody for coming by and checking it out. And oh, hey, Leonard. Hi. Hey, Adam, did you get to manage to get my email with the contact? I will double check, but I think I did. Leonard and I have been chatting a little bit. So anyway, that's a different story for another day. Anyway, thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks at the next Every Other Sunday show. And who knows what we'll talk about then? I don't. So got that going for us, which is nice. All right. I hope everybody has a good day, and we'll see you next time.